Yeah, it started.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's session, and good morning to everyone. So, in for this series, we have planned in a joint collaboration with the Gurgaon Salesforce Developer Group and the Bhilwara Salesforce Developer Group India. So, this series is a joint collaboration, and the series is the a useful JavaScript concept for LWC, and this is the part second of this series, and this is the last session in this series that we have planned till yet. So, welcome to Trailblazer community. Let's succeed together, have learn, connect, have fun, and give back to the Trailblazer community as always. Uh, I am Vishal Saraswat. I am the leader at Salesforce Developer Group, Gurgaon, India. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter on the following link that is in the slide. And regarding the other things, I will share all the things in the chat window, like how you can connect with us on the YouTube channel and the Telegram channel, each and everything. I will share in next couple of minutes. So now I would like to hand over it to Ankush for his introduction and presentation part. So over to you, Ankush.
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. Hello, everyone. Good morning, and thanks for joining today's call. So, before I start, from yesterday's session, there was a query in yesterday's session related to what will be the maximum length of JavaScript string. So, I'm just pasting the answer in the chat window, so you can just refer it. Okay, let me share. Please let me know once it's visible.
Yes, Ankush, it's visible now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining today's call. And now today we'll discuss about mostly in the asynchronous part, like what are all the options to call, like if in you're working on LWC and you want to call Apex method and how you can do that and how it works on the JavaScript side. So we'll more talk on the JavaScript side, but these concept will be helpful for you to work on LWC. Okay. So yeah, a little bit about myself. So I am working at S&P Global as a senior software developer, and I'm having 13 plus years of experience in IT. I have worked in multiple technologies, and in last 5 years, I'm working on Salesforce. I also have four Salesforce certificates. I am 3x Ranger, and I have completed all the super badges, 21 super badges. Also, as you are aware, like I am group leader of this Bhilwara group, and earlier I was active on Answers community, and I have answered 4,600 plus answers, along with 880 best answers. So that's all about me, and now we'll start with today's session. So today's agenda will be, first we'll discuss about functions, what are all functions, what are all way to define the functions, and then callback function, what is callback function and how it works. Then promises, so promises and async await. So both are used for any async operation you want to perform in JavaScript. So mainly in the asynchronous operation, we just interact with the server. So in our case, we need to call Apex method either to fetch data or to store some information in Salesforce. So we just use promises or async await. And at the end, we'll have question answer. After that, we'll have Kahoot quiz. So and the winners will get the certification vouchers. Okay, let's start. So first topic is functions. So functions is a set of statements that perform a task or calculate some value. So function is like the definite functions, how we define is just like in any other language. So first we have to mention function keyword, and then what will be the function name, and what is what we want to return. So if we are not mentioning the return keyword, then the nothing will be returned and undefined will be returned. So if you want to get something from a function, you have to mention return keyword along with whatever value you want to pass. So in this example, we'll try to print in the log whatever we are returning from this function. So in the output, hello world will be printed. I'll just go through the hands-on just after a few minutes. So before that, let's move to the next, which is arrow functions. So arrow functions is introduced in year 6, which is latest way of mentioning the functions. I'll explain like how this method came in picture. So arrow functions allow us to write shorter functions. So it's whatever we have seen in the last example. The similar way, it's just there is a parenthesis, then arrow sign, and then whatever we want to print. So the hello will have the same output what we have seen. So in just 2 lines, we have mentioned what we have in the previous slide. So it is very handy. It is very shorter in the manner, and there are some differences and some advantage and disadvantage which we'll cover in the later stage. Okay, so let us move on to the hands-on for this. So first we'll open the inspect and we'll go to console. Okay, so let me take an example of first function, like how function works. So here we have created hello function and we are calling this hello function inside console log. So if I execute it, it will just print hello world in the console. So hopefully today the font is visible and it's pretty clear. If you can confirm.
So is font confirmed means sorry, is font visible to you? So please confirm us so that we can proceed further.
Or
Okay.
if you want me to increase the size, then I can.
Ankush, you can proceed now. I think it is visible to each and everyone. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for confirmation. Okay, and in JavaScript, the difference with the other languages, we can use this function as a variable as well. So we can just pass this function to a variable. So what we can do, we can just create a variable, hello variable. And what I did, I just removed this name from here. So function keyword, then parentheses, and in the curly braces, you can perform any operation. So here I'm returning hello world. So I can also use this variable and just I can call a variable with this curly braces, and it will work in the similar fashion what we have done in the first example. So there are two different ways, and this is a traditional function, so which is used since beginning. So here we can have a variable as well, and we can just use this variable and pass the variable. So suppose we can also pass on the parameters if needed, and here I can pass like a 5 and 10. And if I want to perform the addition of these two, I try to write. So yeah, 5 plus 10 is 15. So the output will be 15. So you can pass parameters as well and then perform some action inside the function. And in the similar fashion, when you call the function, you have to pass those values inside those variables. Okay, next, how the arrow function derived. So we'll take this example. Or let me take the first example. So this is a function. Okay. So this is a function. So in arrow function, what they have done is they have removed this function keyword. Okay, and return is also not mandatory. If it is just one liner, you can just pass it on. And in arrow function, you have to mention the arrow sign just after the parenthesis. So this will look like this. Also, if it is a single liner, you can also remove these curly braces. So it can become just like a shorter way of presenting the function. So you just can have variables or the parameters what need to be passed into a arrow function and what could be the expected output. So if I execute it, I'll get the same result, but it is a quite lesser number of lines of code and it's pretty like straightforward. You just need to define arrow and the values. Another way of defining, we can also, if there is only one parameter, so just be careful about these parentheses. So if there is only one parameter, you can just define like this also. You need not to define the parentheses. So, but it is only valid for if we have only one parameter. So if I multiply it by 10 and if I just pass only one parameter, so the output will be 50. So this is also a valid scenario where I can just define like what needs to be as a input parameter and what needs to be written. So return keyword is not mandatory for this case. But if we go to the traditional method, and if I am not mentioning return keyword over here, and I'll just mention A for the time being. And if I try to print, so it will just give me undefined. So if return keyword is not mentioned, then we'll just get undefined. So this is also a difference like in arrow function, you can just mention like you need not to mention return keyword, but here you have to. Okay, the other difference between these two are so arguments. So we can have nested functions as well. Like inside a function, we can call another function or we can use another function. And we can pass on the parameters. So let me show you another example. So I created one variable, my function. Inside my function, I created one object. Inside an object, I have a function which is show arguments. And here I am printing console log arguments. So arguments is an object and it's provided by JavaScript. So it's a list of parameters actually. So whenever we call any method, and if we are passing some parameter to it, so it will be a list of those parameters. So it's an array, it's in the array form. And yesterday session we have discussed like if you want to convert an array into a simple, if you want to break an array, so we can use this three dots. Okay, and if I want to execute it, so it will just print 1, 2, 3, 4. But in case of arrow functions, if I try to convert it into arrow function, so it will not work. It will give me an error, like because it doesn't understand what is arguments for this method. Okay, so let me create. So if I write like this, so it's just similar to a arrow function. And if I try to execute it, it will give me an error because it doesn't understand like what is the argument. So this is also another difference. Like arguments can be used, argument keyword can be used for the traditional function, but not for the arrow function. Next difference is we can use a function as a constructor. So if I want to, so I what I did, I just created a function car, and I want to create a variable which is red car, and I want to pass the color to it. So I can just use the new keyword, and I can just call this method function and pass the red inside it. So if I try to print red car, so it will show me it, it's an object which is having property as red, color as red. So functions can be used as the normal functions can be used as constructor, but the arrow functions can't be. So so these are few differences between the normal function and arrow function. So these are the differences. So arguments object can be used in normal function, but arrow function cannot. And the normal function can be used as constructor, as just now we have seen that, and it will just create an object. And return keyword must be used in the normal functions. But arrow functions, you can use return keyword, but it's not mandatory that you have to use in arrow functions. So this is also a difference. The next is this keyword difference. So this keyword in the regular function is dynamic and depends upon the invocation. So because normal function can be called in multiple ways, but in the arrow function we cannot call in a different way. So that is also a difference, like how the this keyword is worked. Okay, next is callback functions. So callback function is we can pass a function as an argument to a function. So we can pass function inside a function as a parameter, and this we can define like when that function has to be executed. So in practical scenario, if you want to perform some operation, but it has to be after some specific, like for example, if you want to fetch some information from Apex side, and once that information is fetched, then only we want to execute some method. So in such cases, we use callback functions. So this is an example of callback function. Sorry. So here we have created a function greet, and it is having two parameters. One is name and second is callback. And we'll talk about this later. The definition we'll talk about later. First, the callback function. So callback function is like call me, and I'll just print like I am a callback function. And at the end, we are passing the function as an argument. So here we are calling this greet function. First, we are passing the name Peter, and then we are passing the callback function, which is call me. So just one more thing need to be note down here, like when we are passing this call me, generally wherever we use function, it comes with the parentheses. But here we will not be mentioning the parentheses. We just have to mention the name of the function. What is the name of the function? So we'll just mention call me. And when it will go inside the greet function, the name will be used in printing the log, and the callback function will be called. So the callback function is actually what we are passing is call me. So it will just call me over here, and it will print after, like first it will print hi Peter, and then it will print I am callback function. So this is the difference, and this is the way we can just use the callback function. So let me show you inside the console. So we have defined this, we have already discussed this, and if I want to execute it, so first it will print first console log, which is hi Peter, and then I am callback function. So instead of console.log, there could be any operation. If you want to calculate something and then you want to call back function and print something. So this is the way you can use and you can just pass a function to a function. So which is called callback function. Okay, and let me see if we have any other example. Okay, let me show you one more example. Okay, so the similar function and so what the first function is same. We have name in my function, which is the callback function. And first we are printing hello world here, and then we are passing that name to the callback function. And we have created another function which is say name, and we are receiving a parameter and we are printing hello, whatever name we are passing to it. So here we are calling it with the set timeout. So set timeout is to perform some operation after a given period of time. So it is having like multiple parameters. First is like which function you want to call, and after like 2 seconds. So it is like after 2 seconds, greet method will be called. Since greet is having two parameters, so you have to mention the parameters after this. So first is the name. So we are passing John over here. And second is the callback function. So this my function will receive the same name. So that's why we have mentioned same name over here. So in set timeout, first is like the function which we are going to call after how much milliseconds. So it's like 2000 and which is like two after 2 seconds. And then if there is any parameter, so if there were no parameters, you need not to pass these two things. You just mention greet and 2000 and set timeout will work. So these are the optional based on the function if function is having parameter. So if I want to execute it, so first it printed hello world and then hello John. But it took some time to print because we have given this timer over here. So after holding for 2 seconds, it just printed like hello world and hello John. So this is the way you can just use callback functions whenever required. Next, we'll talk about promises. So promises are used to handle asynchronous operations. So in our LWC case, we need to call Apex method. So if you want to call Apex methods, we can just use promises. In LWC also, whenever we call Apex methods, most of the time we use promises, although they were not known as promises over there, but they are having the similar functionality. So once you will understand the promises, it will be easier for you to calling Apex in the LWC. So this is a syntax for defining the promise. We have to define it like new promise, and inside this there is a function which is like resolve, which is having two parameter resolve and reject. And here we will perform the operation, and we'll go to the example to understand like how it works. So next is promise consumers. We'll go on the hands-on. So before that, the next is promise consumers. So promise consumers are like what will be the output we'll receive by calling this promise. So as we can see here two parameters, resolve and reject. So either it can resolve means the successfully the operation is performed. In case if we are calling apex method and if it is successfully called, then it is like resolve. If there is any error occurred while calling the apex method, or if there is limit is reached or some exception thrown from the apex method, then it is rejected. So to handle these two scenarios, like either if we get the successful message or successful data, or if there is any exception or there is any error. So we have two these methods, then and catch. So it is invoked when a promise is either resolved or rejected. So then is called both the times, either resolved or rejected. But in LWC, we just use then for just the resolution. So whenever any success happens or any successful message or successful data comes in, then only then will be called. And for all the rejected or if there is any error occurs, so catch, it will always go inside the catch. Okay, so let me go to the console and show you an example just to have better understanding on this. So first we'll define the promise. So this is the way we, as we have seen the syntax, like new promise, then what function is default, like resolve and reject. And here we will perform some operations. So we have like constant x and y, and we are comparing if x and y are same or not. If it is exactly same, then we'll call the resolve method. Otherwise, we'll call the reject. Okay, so we have defined promise. Now, how promise can be called? So we just have to mention this variable promise and then dot then, and inside this we have to pass a callback function. So what we have learned just now, so it is a callback function because it will be called after the promise will be completed. So once this promise will execute, it will just process this execution, it will check x and y, and then based on that this dot then or catch will be called, and according to that this callback function will be executed. So if I try to execute it, success, you are a geek. So since these are the same, let's suppose I just change it. Let me make it again. If I change this to something else like ABC, and if I try this promise again, so some error has occurred. So if we are sending reject from here, then it will always go in the catch, and it will just print some error has occurred. So in case if there is any error over here itself, like before executing this if or before executing resolve or reject, and if any error occurs over here, in that case also it will come to the catch. It will go to then only when this resolve method is called or the success happens. So in promise, you have to be clear that dot then is called when the success operation is performed, like whatever we are trying to perform inside that promise is successful, then only then will be called. Otherwise, if any error occurs either in calling apex or somewhere else, but which is related to this, then this catch will be executed. So this is the difference between then and catch. Okay, next we'll move to the different promise methods. So we have already learned about like how then and catch behaves. There are few other methods which are used for, let's suppose you want to call multiple promises, or if we take an example, so while loading a component on LWC, I have a scenario where I have multiple drop-down lists, and in those drop-down, I want to fetch the information from Apex side, and all are having different information. So what I need to do, I need to call Apex methods, different Apex method for different drop-down list or some information. So what I will do, I'll just call those methods multiple times. Since it's asynchronous, because it takes some time to fetch the information from Apex side and just get it into JavaScript. So that's why we use promise for asynchronous. And just to handle those scenarios, either we can use all settled, any, or race. So there are some differences between these four. So these four are used for if you want to perform multiple asynchronous or synchronous operations. And based on the scenarios, you can use either all settled, any, or rest. So what is the difference between these four? I'll just show with the example as well. For now, like return a promise if all of the given promises have fulfilled and reject. So there are either two scenarios, either it will be reject or resolve. So any whatever either it is failed or not, if all are passed, then this all will execute. So and if all settled, so return a promise that resolve after all of the given promises have either fulfilled or rejected. So what is the difference between these two is in case of all, if anyone either failed or went into error, then it will just come out from that. It will not execute the other promises. But in case of settled, it will just execute all the promises, whether it's failed or whether it's rejected or whether it's successful. It will execute all of them. And in any, so what is the difference in any? So it will just come out from those promises. At least one of them is successfully executed. So either anyone is executed successfully or all are rejected. So at least one has to be successfully executed, then it will just come out. And race is used when any one of them is executed, whether it's reject or success, it will just come out from them. So maybe you are not getting 100%. So let me give you an example in the console. So it will be easier to understand. So first we'll have an example of all. Okay, so here I have promise one, promise two, and promise three. So in promise one, I'm just returning resolve with the three as an output. Promise 2 is nothing but just the value, which is 42. And promise 3 is I have created a new promise object and then I have mentioned like it has to wait for 100 seconds and then it should return this. Okay. So if I call this promise.all, so I just have to define in an array like promise 1, promise 2, and promise 3. Dot then, and if I want to print it, so since I have used all, so it will perform all the operations until unless we mention reject over here or somewhere if we mention reject. So it will pass first of all 3, then 42, and then it will be passed this one. So if I just change first one resolve to reject, and if I want to see what comes out of this, clear this out. So nothing has come out because here we are handling dot then we haven't handled dot catch over here. So it will not first and first promise first is rejected. So it will not go to promise 2 and 3, although we have mentioned all, but still it will not go to 2 and 3 since first is rejected. Okay, if we want to execute 1, 2, and 3, then we can use all settled. So let me show you example of that. So in that case, whether it is rejected or whatever the output is, it will execute every time. Okay, so this is the syntax. Like similar way, we have defined promise one, promise two, and promise. Okay, so we are just defining promise one and two. So we are just passing it to promises, and then inside promise all settled, we are just passing this as a parameter. Okay, and if I want to execute it, So it just printed fulfilled and rejected. So okay, okay. So it is just printing the status of the result. So that's why. And for the second one, it is we are just rejecting from here. So it will not print. If we use dot catch, then it will. So let me show you that as well. If you use catch over here, dot catch, inside this we'll have error, error, and then arrow function. And here we can print console.log and error. Okay, it's not printed. Okay, not sure why it didn't went through. Okay, we'll move to the next one, which is any. So we have again three promises, promise one, promise two, and promise three. First, we are rejecting it. Second one is having resolution, but after 100 milliseconds. And third one is after 500 milliseconds. So as in the definition we have seen, like for any, at least one has to be successful. So the first one is rejected and second is having the resolution. So if I execute it, so it will just print this quick, since it is just ignore the reject one and it will pass the successful one. So it will just wait for the first success and it will come out. So okay, next is race. So inside race, there is slight difference with the any. So for race, we have promise one, promise two, and both are having resolve. And we are passing promise one and two to race. And here we have timeout like 500 milliseconds and 100 milliseconds. Okay, so if we execute it, the two is printed because race is like whosoever first complete their operation, it will just execute that one. So since it's just 100 milliseconds and it will just complete before promise one, so that's why it printed two. So these are all about promises. Next, we'll move to the async await. So async await is like in this example, as we have seen in the previous example, we have defined promise one, promise two, and multiple promises, and we are calling in one method. So we are not aware like what happened with the promise one. So if we use race, we are not aware what happened with promise one. In last example, when I was showing you about the all settle, in all settle case, we were not able to catch the error which came into the second promise. So this is the bottleneck when we use promise and race, and it is little bit complex to understand like how these are executing and which is going to first, which is going to second. So to resolve this cumbersome problem with these promises, the JavaScript introduced async await. So any async function is a function declared with async keyword. So it's a normal function. Just only thing is we are just declaring it with async keyword. And await keyword is used with the promises which we are going to use inside this function. So just make sure that await is only used inside this async function. If you have not defined async before the function, the await will not be executed. So you have to be careful about it. So await is nowhere be used except the function. Okay, we'll take an example of async and await. Okay, so async, we just define async before the function, nothing else. And when we call this function, again, we'll be using dot then. And after successful completion of this, it will just show me an alert with the return method, whatever the return we have. Okay, let me take another example along with the await keyword. So how we can use await inside the async function. So again, similar way, we have async function, and here we have defined promise. Inside this promise, we are printing this done after 1000 seconds, and we are just printing this result, but we'll have to await. So await is nothing but they just wait to complete this promise. So we have mentioned 1000 milliseconds, so it will just wait for 1000 milliseconds and wait for what we are returning from here. Then it will receive in the result and it will just print the output of this. Okay. So, so when I call this task as synchronous function, it just waited for 1000 millisecond and then printed done. So mostly it is used for multiple where multiple promises need to be called and we have to wait in the chain manner. Like first you have to complete promise one, then you have to execute promise two. So in practical scenario, let's suppose you want to perform some operation in batch and you have multiple, you have an array which is, let's suppose have 100 elements and you want to execute those elements in the subgroup of 10 elements. So then what you can do, you can just use this async, and inside async you can create a loop, and inside loop you can pass 10 parameters and just use keyword await. So it will just call that method 10 times with every time the different parameters, and it will just execute one by one. So in such scenarios, async await is used where you have to perform similar operation multiple times or different operations, asynchronous operations multiple times. So why async await preferred over promises? So first is it's concise and clean. So it is more readable and easy to understand. Then error handling is also easy because you need not to, if you go back to the example, so when you call the task function or when you call the task function, there itself you will just get the response like what happened with the promise and you can just perform. You need not to use like if we have multiple promises, we need not to use multiple dot then and catch. So it's easy to error handle. Then debugging is also easy because it's step by step. Like first promise will execute, then second promise will execute, then third promise will execute. So debugging is also easy in that. Then error stack is also clear because first the stack will have like either it occurred in promise one, two, or three. So it is easy to track and the errors in the stack as well. We can see like which await method got failed and which created the issue. Okay, so that's all we have for today's session. So now we are open for the questions. So if anyone has any questions.
So guys, please put up your all of your questions in the chat window. In the meanwhile, I'm just sharing the feedback form. regarding our JavaScript series. So please fill this form so that we can get your feedback and we can improve us. This is the first question.
Okay, I'm just stop sharing for a while to take questions if there is any.
So Ankush, we have a question like if we call me inside a function without passing
Mhm.
as parameter,
Mhm.
will it be same as before?
Yeah, calling inside, okay, if we call me inside a function. So yeah, it will not able to understand like because call me function is out of that scope. So function is having their own scope, and the call me function is outside that function. So it will not allow you to call, and it should give an error to you because that function doesn't understand what is call me.
Okay. Next question we have is what is the default timeout for a callback function to get executed?
So there is no default timeout. It just executed once. So for that, you need to understand how JavaScript engine works. So we can have another session. So we maybe come up with that session where we'll explain you how JavaScript engine works. But for high level, it will just execute whenever the queue is free. So since JavaScript engine works single-threadedly, so at a time only one operation can be executed. Although there are some queues which handle these asynchronous operations. So whenever means there is no timeline, it will just execute whenever the stack is free.
Okay. Next question we have is size of the promise. Uh, yeah, this is the question.
Size of the promise, is it like how many promises we can call at the time?
So Mahadev Shami, can you please elaborate this question more so that we can understand what you are looking to ask? So in the meanwhile, I'm just taking the next question. What are the best practices to work with LWC using JavaScript?
Okay, so there are few like first thing you have to uh, careful about like when to use connected callback and when to use like render callback. So there I will share you a link where you can just go through the basic things and uh, another thing is there are methods like because in LWC we have class and inside class we have different type of methods where we execute our let's suppose I want to handle like if user input something and I want to handle on that particular input value. So I'll create a method. Inside method, if you want to use any global variable, so you have to use this keyword. So those things you have to take care mostly if you are from the Apex or Visual Force background, then you have to more careful about this keyword.
Okay. What is the data size or capacity of promise to store data? This was the question I think that was Mahadev Shami was asking previously.
Yeah, so actually, Promise doesn't store any data. It is just like it will just call a method and it will just pass on that information to the JavaScript. So there is no as such no limit. You can just call it, but the JavaScript may not be able to handle the big chunk of data, and it will just reduce the performance of the page. So you have to be careful about whenever you are using the like big chunk of data on the front end because it is always a best practice to use like less number of data or less number of records on the front end. So that's why we use lazy loading in the LWC. When maybe in future we will have one series on the LWC. So on the LWC we have like template if, or so template if is used to just display this data conditionally if it is required. So there are few ways where you can optimize your page, but yeah, it has, you have to be careful about that, because if you are working with big large data, then it may reduce the performance of the page.
Okay.
Mhm.
Next question we have is what is that? Can you please share some more scenarios for async and await? So I think Shailendra, we can cover this in the next session or series. We can plan it. Yes, Ankush, or do you want to add something more in that?
Yeah, so majorly, as I explained, you need to perform multiple asynchronous operation sequentially, means one after another. So first you have to complete first operation, then second operation, then third operation. In such scenarios, async await is used. So as I mentioned, like if you want to perform an array, an operation on array, and if array is having like 100 elements, and if you want to perform it in some 10 elements at a time, so then in such cases you can use async await. Otherwise, you can just go with the conventional promise, and it will just work for you.
Okay. Next question we have: can you recommend some resources to learn JavaScript and LWC from?
Sure. So for LWC, I think the Salesforce developer, either you go with the Trailhead, or if you want to explore more, except that although Trailhead is having a lot more things like many modules and super badges there for LWC. But if you want to explore more options, then I'll just share that link, the developer LWC developer site, where you can find each and every example of like what are all the components we can use inside LWC and how we can use it. So there are a lot of information on those sites. So I'll just share meanwhile in some time over
Okay.
here.
Okay. Next question is what is set immediate in promise function?
I need to check on this.
So Amrit, you can connect with us on the Twitter and we can discuss this question on that.
Yeah.
Next question is when to use wire or connected callback to fetch data from Apex.
Yeah. So we can use both, but there are some scenarios. For example, if you want to make sure like your page is loaded only after fetching the data. Let's suppose you want to display a list of accounts on the front end side. So in that case, if you use wire method, you may not able to handle it, because what happens whenever the LWC is loaded, first the connected callback is called, and then the wire methods will be executed. But actually the problem is these are all asynchronous. So that's why I in such scenarios, if you want to handle it, so what we have done means in one scenario we faced the same issue. We were using wire method and we were not able to load the page, because we were not able to update the variable which is handling on the front end. So what we just used a template if to load the page, and we were using the variable which is updated from that connected callback, which is like calling the apex function. So we used connected callback in there, that case. So in connected callback you will get the uh, results after the this executed successfully.
Okay. Next question is, can we completely avoid Apex in JS script in LWC?
No, for any operations on the Salesforce side, like if you want to update something, or you want to update in the bulk operation, or you want to fetch a lot of records, then you have to use Apex controller. But there are in the recent release, Salesforce released few uh, wire methods which can be fetched like list of related lists. So earlier that related list can't be fetched. At a time you can only fetch one record, but now they have introduced few new wire methods which can be used to fetch bulk data as well. So in such cases, you may avoid like Apex, but in real life scenarios, you may need to combine data with the multiple objects, and you may need to create wrapper class. In such cases, you need to use Apex. If it is straightforward, then yeah, you go with the wire methods.
Okay. Next one is the feedback. Request you to plan for LWR session in next upcoming series. So thank you so much, Rahul. We will plan it accordingly, and we will convey you. Next is that connect. One more thing. I think Malati has given the answer of this. Is there any time limit to use a promise with another promise within another promise, like recursively using promise?
Is there any limit to use? Yeah, there is no limit. Recursively, it's not recursively. It is like nested inside one promise. Like one promise is completed, then you can in dot. Then you can call another promise, and inside that dot, then you can call another promise. So this way, nested promise can happen. But just to make it easier, you can use async await. So instead of using that nested promises, I would suggest you to use async await, which is much clearer and it will be easy to handle.
Okay. I think there is no more questions in the chat window. One more question is SLDS is enough for React or another or other framework is needed?
Um, as per my experience, Harshad, we were able to achieve SLDS itself. Means we haven't used any React framework. We just use SLDS, and we were able to achieve like a lot of things with that.
I think Ankush, we are good with the Q&A part. So, guys, if you have more questions, so due to some time limit constraint, we are having some sort of time frame. So you can connect with Ankush on the Twitter or LinkedIn, and you can ask your questions directly to him. So, Ankush, I think we can proceed with the Kahoot part now. And till that time, I am sharing very less feedback in the feedback form, so I would request you each and everyone to share your feedback, so that it can improve us and we can plan it accordingly based on that feedback form. So requesting you each and everyone to please fill this feedback form, so we can wait for 1 or 2 more minutes. So till that time, please fill this form, and then we will be going to start the Kahoot. In that meanwhile, Ankush, you can share your screen and attendees can join us.
Yeah, just give me a moment, Vishal.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay, let me share my screen. So hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Ankush. The screen is visible.
Okay, so the rules regarding certification vouchers we have explained yes in yesterday's session as well. We are just reiterating them again. So in order to receive a voucher code, you must sign up for a WebAssessor account. So because the Trailblazer community will provide you that voucher which is aligned with your WebAssessor account. If you do not have, you may create it and will provide us later, but you must be having a valid WebAssessor account. Then only you are entitled to receive the voucher. The most important part of this is Salesforce limits each member to winning up to 3 vouchers per 6 months. So if you have won a voucher in any other community group earlier in last 6 months, 3 vouchers, then you are not entitled. So if you win and if you provide your name, then the Trailblazer community will check on your profile, and if you have already won 3, then you will not be entitled. So it will be a waste of the voucher. So if you have already won, just please let us know and we'll pass it on to some other person. So the winners, only winners, whosoever will be winners, they have to provide first name, last name, and their WebAssessor email ID to receive voucher. So after the Kahoot, we'll provide a link to the winners so they can fill their name and email ID details and pass it, just complete that form. Sorry. And voucher, since voucher will be provided by Trailblazer community, so it may take 2 to 3 weeks. So you just have to wait for some time, and you will receive directly an email from Trailblazer community to your whatever web accessor email. So you just have to wait for some time regarding that. So it may not be instant, but you will get it definitely in some time. Also, the voucher expiry date will not be extended. So whatever expiry date Trailblazer community mentioned in the email along with the voucher, you have to utilize that voucher within the given timeline. It will not be extended for any future date. Also, we will provide this link to you, so you can just go to this link and just later after this Kahoot, you can just go to this link and check like what are all the rules and regulations related to getting the certification voucher from Salesforce. Okay, now it's time to Kahoot quiz. So today again we'll provide coupons to the first four winners. Sorry. So first four winners will be entitled to get the certification voucher. So I am moving to the Kahoot site. You can go either join with the kahoot.it and enter this game pin, and either you can just scan this QR code and just log in.
So guys, please use your full name. So it would be easy for us to verify the details. So please use your full name. And regarding the certification voucher, you the winners will get it in the 2 to 3 weeks, or if some technical issue or we can say some issue arises, then you will get it in the one month. So please have some patience in that time. And regarding the voucher expiry date, the thing is that you will get each and everything in the mail. If you will be the winner and you get the email from the Trailblazer community, you get each and everything from the Trailblazer community in that email itself. So you don't have to be worried about it. So please use your full name. And those persons who haven't provided the responses in the feedback form, so I would request you to have the feedback in that form as well. And if you're having any queries regarding the certification voucher, so we have already shared the link, like certification voucher link. So you can go through with that link and you can get more details about how you will get it and what is the criteria. and those who are the winners of yesterday's Kahoot session. So if they win, they won't be entitled to win it again because you have already won it on yesterday. So you won't be having. I mean, you won't be entitled to be a winner. You can take participate. You can take participate in this session, but you won't be a winner. So if you won by a Kahoot quiz or a sorry, the social media championship, so you will get only one winner entry. You won't be entitled for multiple times. Ankush, I think we can start now.
Okay, we'll wait for 10 more seconds and then we'll start. So I'm going to lock it. So if anyone want to join, please join fast. Otherwise, we are just locking it in few seconds. Okay, so I'm just starting it. So best of luck, everyone, and so we'll start over here. So which arrow function syntax is not valid will give an error. So which of these is incorrect? Okay, so this one is the incorrect one because if you have more than one parameters, then you have to provide the parentheses, otherwise it will give an error. So this is the answer. Okay, so we'll move to the next one. So it's just true or false. Return keyword must be used to return value in arrow functions. Yeah, so it's false because arrow function is not, it's not mandatory every time to use return keyword in arrow functions. Okay, so leaderboard is getting changed. What is the difference between arrow function and normal function? So use of arguments, object, function as a constructor, use of return keyword. Yeah, so all these are the differences between arrow function and normal functions, which we just went through. Okay, yeah, leaderboard is slightly changed. Now Chandu is on top, which is not a valid promise method. Yeah, so resolved is not any method. Resolve, then, or catch is the valid one. Okay, again it's changing now. Sachin is on top. And now we'll move to the next. Which method will process all promises irrespective of the output? Yeah, so all settled is like where all will be executed, whatever will be the result. Okay, it's changing. Now, next, what will be the output of the function? So it's a function where we are calling the promise and we are just what will be the output. So we have given more time for such type of questions, so you can just read carefully and then answer. Yeah, so done will be printed. So we have seen this like how it works, promises. Okay, it is again changing. Now we are moving to the last question. So just try your best. Why is async await preferred over promises? So yeah, it's all of these like concise and clean, better error handling and debugging. Okay, so now we are just going to the results. So just so again, Shubham is the third. I think the yesterday also Shubham was the winner. Then Sachin, congratulations Sachin. Then Abhishek and Ria and Filal. I think let me confirm it. So
Ankush, I can see from the yesterday session, I think Abhishek and Shubham was the winner in yesterday's session
okay,
as well. So Abhishek and Shubham, as I already conveyed all the things that if you would be the winner in the yesterday session, then you won't be entitled to win it again, right? So congratulations to win this session in this session again. But the thing is that we need to give the vouchers to other participants. So
yeah. So
Ankush, can you please verify the details from other winners and we can ask the details.
sure, sure. So just give me a moment to fetch the report, and I'll just share the screen again. Okay, so I have a list with me. So let me share my screen again. So since two of the winners are from the last session, so will means you have done great, Abhishek and Shubham. But as you have already won in the yesterday session, so you are not entitled to get one more certification. So we'll just provide it to the next two. So rank 5 and rank 6. So
Ankush,
until
can you please share your screen?
yeah, I'm just sharing.
I'm just
Yeah, is it visible?